Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, it's spring, which means it's baseball season, effectively. And we have not addressed it to this point in this podcast, which is not like us. Usually we at least give it a little bit of a nod, a salute.
Well, it started early this year.
Sport.
It snuck up on us. I thought I could slide that one past people. We biffed it. I don't know. We did a lot of other fun stuff. We did a UFC podcast. We got Calhoun on a podcast. We got a couple more of those too, where there's going to be some people from the internet that you're going to be like, oh my God, they got that guy to come on a podcast. There's going to be a couple more fun ones yet this year. But yeah, we only have so many minutes in the day to podcast, and baseball is just not our strong suit. You built a mild model a couple years ago. I've messed around with home run props. I think that's another one I want to go back to.
Oh, same.
Because there's just there's a decent amount of differences in the markets in some of these prop ones where just a modicum of shopping is gonna probably almost just fucking land you into some plus EV spots by accident. Like I know people. I've had people reach out. I'm not sure if I actually would say I know this person, but I've talked to somebody in the DMs who all they do in life is ARB props across a couple books. He's like, there's a couple places that'll take 4 figures on a player prop, and he's like, and there's a couple paperheads who are going to be overlapping with them the other way. And he's like, as long as the accounts stay open, you can sit and make a tiny little return on player prep. So, I mean, the difference is if the differences are big enough to ARB, then there are going to be obviously
there's edges. You should
always be shopping. But if there's ARBable markets daily, Christ's sakes, you better be shopping.
Always be shopping.
Always be shopping. I should put on a baseball hat. Sorry.
I want to just talk turkey for a second. It's too late to do a season preview. Season's already started. You don't already have your win totals and your division bets and your soft prices on your rookie of the years in your pocket. We're not going to be able to help you find any value there, I don't think. And we usually, it's not fair to bring in a guest and say, hey, we're a week into the season. What have you seen so far? Give us what are your winners? Oh, you had your hair all done today. You're going with the Papa Cal's shamed you into putting on the Twins hat. But yeah, I know it's too late to do a season preview, and that's not always as interesting anyway, because you can find those everywhere, and you can find those with a lot of people who do bet baseball regularly and have informed opinions. So best, go out and find those. And this show, we want to talk about something a little different, and we are now in the daily content biz. Andy, you do a daily show, I do a daily show. There's a lot of content being created now. And we don't have the luxury of really being able to completely mail in 2 months of the year, which is June and July, right? In previous cycles, we had soccer, we had Olympics, we had Women's World Cup.
Euros is really nice.
Yeah. There were kind of standalone events that helped us kind of get through the doldrums of summer. So we were able to successfully ignore baseball, at least from a handicapping standpoint, leave it to the smarter, sharper end bosses who dominate that sport as it is. And, we could focus on our football prep. Don't think I'm going to have that luxury this summer. NBA is not going to go as late as it did last year. Last year, NBA went into the month of July. This year, it's going to be open. It's going to be over in early June. We're going to have a big old gap between the end of the NBA regular postseason and sort of the true prep for NFL. And I'm probably going to be, and there's, besides tennis, I'm going to be degenerate in baseball probably. And so need to find some way to kind of make that worthwhile, some way to kind of have fun betting that. And Wouldn't you know it? The porp space in baseball is
Oh
kind
my
of
God.
blowing up right now. Like that's one of the hotter things going in the conversation on gambling Twitter. What is your thought on that new thing? Because I don't remember ever anyone being like, "Hey, I'm super fired up to talk K props. I'm super fired up to talk no run first inning." Like that seems like it's come out of nowhere.
I don't know. Like K props, it's been a couple years of that. I've seen a ton of those posted the past couple of years. People like that. People like a counting stat in the game. They feel like, I think, just taking a step back and thinking about it from my experience, as far as how I would want to bet baseball, knowing how successful people model and bet baseball, is beyond the time I would have to spend, because I don't have the coding nor the data to maybe get that done. And I hate to just half-ass baseball. So when you look at something like K props, a guy who says, I don't have time to really, build out a player level model for betting baseball totals, sides, even, maybe some alt run lines, whatever you want to get weird with during the, the big picture game bets. K props are very intriguing, I think, because you're just looking at a pitcher and how there's so many of these data sites looking at like his spin rates and looking at the velocities and the percentage he throws each pitch compared to how he used to mix it up. And then you can look at maybe just looking at, even at, not if their whole order, but just looking at like the 3 or 4 good hitters in every order and saying like, how do the guys I'm worried about match up against this? And then maybe taking some of those shittier, I hate to say shittier players, these are major league ball players, like they've earned it, they're in the show. But some of the end of the lineup guys, bottom of the lineup, that sounds a little better. Seeing, do we have guys who are going to strike out a lot, and then you can make some assumptions and play some K props. Like I think somebody can easily work their way around that without heavy modeling. So I think that's why we saw a lot of that coming up. The no run first inning is completely different to me. That is not people that are like, I'm wanting to like dig into the data. No, they want to bet that cashes in like 15 minutes.
They want, yeah, right.
No,
That's
I
like
mean,
the horse racing kind of
it's
racing
this,
scratch that itch kind of deal. Yeah.
it does feel like a scratch that edge. Like, oh my God, like the people who are doing, first person to score in an NBA game, first team to 15 when they're watching March Madness. The people that just want those, they want the instant hit one way or the other. They don't want to wait for a whole game. So, and the funny thing about it is, and I am going to find this and I'm going to retweet it right now I'm going to retweet it from the Deep Dive account. But Captain Jack had our friend Captain Jack.
Unabated, Captain Jack, yeah.
Unabated Captain Jack put out a pretty good little tweet thread about, no run first innings, and basically saying, it's the pitchers, you got the starting pitchers for sure. They're at their freshest. You would think they're just going to mow these guys down. Well, no, it's the only time you're surely looking at the top of the order for both sides.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of uncertainty, and it is not a low scoring inning compared to some of the other ones out there. So it's just betting the no for sure is probably minus EV for the most part, based on how much vig they're going to lay on this overall. And the fact that, smart people I know that really, really understand baseball, like Jason Weingarten,
Mm-hmm.
he's if you see him betting these, it's a yes. Like he's betting yeses. Other people I know that, like, if they're going to bet a no, it has to be a pretty good plus number. Like, and some of these do get out of hand where you'll end up with a plus 125 on the no.
Okay.
So, just in general, I see smart people betting the yes. I read Captain Jack's tweet thread. I see the enthusiasm, the mania over this right now. And I'm almost wondering, and this is where I was driving with this. It's a prop market with low liquidity. And if people are really wanting to bet the no's, is it just going to drive more value on yeses?
You mean, is it like a NBA stat prop unders or something?
Yeah, like, just somebody pointed that out. He said I think it was AD. He said if you looked at the pinnacle odds for basically, I think it was just every single running back.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, if you bet the unders on every single running back's yardage totals for like the last 5 years, you're up X amount of units.
Yeah.
It's just that there are going to be inherent value spots.
He also
based on
said
how
if
the
you
market,
just bet no every game on the open and close, right? Didn't he have that tweet as well?
yeah,
That
yeah.
was
There's,
quite
I
good.
mean, there's a few of those overs. So like,
You've lost a lot of money.
this is a
Yeah.
good point. It's kind of like betting the field at the craps table. You look at that, like,
that's a great comp.
Holt,
Great
you
comp.
you've crushed it today as far as
Great,
chatter.
great comp.
Because what happens when you look down at the field on the craps table? You say that's a
That's a lot of numbers.
And not only that,
I only got to roll one of those.
12 plays double. That's like an extra number.
Yeah.
And then you start doing if you look at the 36 combinations the dice can come up in, you are not even getting half of them. It is a problem because you're not getting the 6, 7, or 8.
There's your problem.
Yeah, the 6, 7, and 8.
They hit a lot.
Yeah. And then five's one that happens too.
Yeah.
Fever, the field reliever.
I
love craps. I love the
you like the
stickman calls.
Yeah,
I love the stickman calls. So
yeah. Kind of like
your
baseball.
Thoughts.
Yeah, kind of like the nomenclature at a baseball game. People, it's fun. I liked all of your breakdown there, and I think what we should do. Have you ever made a model, by the way, for K props or runs?
Home run props.
Okay.
Well, it was bad.
Let me ask you to take your experience of the home run prop and think about how you would go about building a K prop model.
Okay.
Because these are two things I'm going to actually work on once the NBA playoffs start to wind down. I'm going to have these guys ready to go, so I have something to talk about. Because once we get to June, July, tennis is too early to do content. Your daily show, like today, I couldn't have given away my tennis picks because they all happened overnight. And so, I would be in the lurch if I didn't have NBA playoff games to talk about. So I'm going to get my K prop model, my runs, first inning, yes, no run model up and running by the time we get to the end of the NBA season. And I want you to kind of talk me through your experience with the K prop, and I'll talk you through how I would build a yes, no model. And you kind of give me your gut feel on, you should do that. You shouldn't do that. I'm going to talk through okay, this is the data that I want to try to run down. If you have any tips or you say, oh, you should go find that there, let me know. The run yes, no model. I feel like there's one super important piece of information, and that almost gets you the whole answer.
The total?
The total. The total. What's the total? After the overnight total has gotten beat up, I want to grab the total after the circles are off.
I know you. So a fun thing I ran into when we got to so this came up in my mind the other day. It's funny that you brought up first inning run, yes or no, because I seen someone post a Prize Picks entry that had that in it. And it's funny how they phrase it, because Prize Picks is not gambling, it's not sports betting, it is DFS. So they can't phrase it that way. They have to say the starting pitchers for these two teams, how many runs will they give up? That's a prop. That's not a betting line. It's a prop. So it's funny that the workaround, and that's fine. I like those guys a lot, but it's funny how they phrased it. And then I looked at that and I said, all right, so the pricing on their parlay pricing is not what you'll get parlaying them at a sports book, because it is, they offer ways where you can get 2 out of 3 legs home and still make money. So it's a little different. You're not getting 2.6 on the or plus 260 on a 2-way parlay, but they don't have pricing. Everything's even money. So just if you're not getting that full parlay price, could you find a couple of those legs that are so far off even that I could make a parlay on Prize Picks? And again, I talked to those guys. So I looked, and there was I seen a bunch. So I didn't count them. And then I went to the market. I went and looked at, the openers. I went and looked at where the lines were, and I picked out the 3 that were the biggest juiced one way or the other. minus 140, minus 145. And sure enough, there were 15 games on the board, and they offered 12 of them. Those 3 were nowhere to be found. I said, you fuckers got me. So kudos to Prize Picks team, because I tried to find a shooting angle there. It didn't quite work. So
do you think they got burned on that and they knew?
I think they have to, like, I think that's probably just kind of, that's
it's 101.
Well, yeah, it's probably across all sports. Like,
it's the easiest leak to plug.
Well, if Lewandowski's minus 250 to score in a soccer match, you don't offer that one, or you put it at 1. You have to put it at 1. He has to get another one, otherwise you just push, because I think that they have to keep things that are maybe within minus 125 kind of range. Otherwise, things will get a little wacky, and they might have some leak, like you said, a leak to plug. So that was my experience this week, trying to find a way to beat them, and somebody beat me to outsmarting me before I even got there. So kudos.
Fair
I
enough.
haven't bet any of these yet, and but it did the exercise of going and looking at the opening prices and where they were bet. It was interesting because it's not super correlated with totals moves. It is very much an independent market.
Really?
I didn't see like corresponding totals moves,
but
every time.
But the initial number that they hang is it is a dead correlation to the
I'm saying the betting after the opener.
Okay.
It's very much independent in that betting. It seemed like I only looked at 2 days worth.
So White Sox opens in 8.5, gets bet up to 9, or gets bet down to 8.
No, but I mean, you're right. When you have one of those,
it's not chained. Basically, it's unchained. It's unchained.
They're untethered to a certain extent. But I mean, you're right. If there's a Rockies game that's 12, and there's a matchup between 2 absolute stud pitchers, that we have one of those lines at 6.5.
6.5,
those are going to be wildly different.
Yeah. Okay. So, my operating assumption, without having ever bet this market, is that there is a 1-to-1 correlation on the opener and the total, and I feel like you can grab a little bit of an edge if what you're saying is the case, and you see market steam on a total in the 6 to 8 o'clock a.m. Pacific window. You could probably just blind bet over or under, or yes or no, based on that steam, and have some small, maybe not plus EV, but at least you're working out, you're wiping out some of the VIG. The next thing I think my approach to making a model for this would be, I want a Poisson distribution for team A scoring a run in the first inning, and a Poisson for team B, and then we're adding those 2 probabilities together. Okay, so I'm actually building a Poisson distribution of how many runs a team will score in the first inning.
You know what the nice part about a Poisson distribution is, Drew?
What's that, Andy?
You don't need any sort of paid add-ons. You don't need any sort of fancy modeling. It is absolutely just built into Excel. That's one of your basic distributions. That's going to be in the stock version. So if you wanted to do that, just dig around on Google how to use that function. It's pretty easy for nice. I mean, what do we say Poisson is best for? It's rare events, rare compared to other things.
Yeah, that's fair.
Rare independent events, or is it less rare? I guess
independently correlated. Yeah,
it's good for like basketball totals, basketball scoring totals, individual scoring totals. Yeah, I'm down with it. I like. I mean, so far.
It's nice because you can set it up in a way that 50% of your probability is 0 runs scored or more. 60% of probability. You set it up in a way that you have a big chunk of the likelihood is 0 runs are scored. So I'm going to build out. I want to build this distribution of runs scored for a team in a half inning. I'm going to do that for both teams. And then I'm going to sum the probabilities to get the probability of any run scored in the first inning.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm saying 1 minus 0 plus 1 minus the 1 minus the probability of 0, 1 minus the probability of 0. Sum those two gives you the probability of at least one run being scored in the first inning of a baseball game.
Or just the inverse of your yes probability.
The inverse of the yes, sure.
Yeah, add all your. How high are you going to go before you have diminishing returns? Like 8 runs?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't. It really. That
I
really
think probably
doesn't
after
matter.
6, you could
probably
probably
4.
quit.
I think
Yeah.
4 for a given
There
for a
was
single
a
team.
game.
Yeah.
There was a game today that had a 4-run first.
Yeah, for a given I think 4 for a given team.
For an individual, I'm
yeah,
saying
for an
4
individual
each.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8 total.
8 total would be, yeah. So the next then step is I need my starting pitchers. Right?
Gotta have those.
Do I need lineups? Or can I just use team offense? Am I going bottom up or am I doing this top down?
So I think if you want to do this and you don't want to get real crazy, I think you do it team offense.
Okay.
And then again, if setting up the automated part of this, team offense, and then maybe adding some context to that later, where you need to maybe do due diligence after the fact. If you set up a model in this manner and you say, here's my distribution of results with this starting pitcher and this lineup and this starting pitcher and this lineup, and I'm showing, yeah, we're getting a run, maybe it's worth looking just to make sure it's not rest day for like 2 big boppers near the top of the lineup.
Okay.
Because if you're missing a guy that normally hits in the 3 hole that's hitting, 286 on pace for like 22 bombs, probably worth scratching that for the day. But I like just the overall automated part of it. I said automated, weird. Automated part of it
right.
to be team level.
Yeah.
With a double check in place. Like, hey, you need to go check lineups, bud.
Okay. Now, do I care about trying to suss out teams that have imbalanced lineups? Right? Like, I remember this a couple years ago. Like, the Reds, for whatever reason, were like, they always scored in the first inning, but they weren't a very good offense. And it was because they had like a good 1, 2, 3. And then 4 through 9 kind of sucked. Well, 9 was the pitcher. So 4 through 8 kind of sucked. And if you looked at like all of the distributions of every team out there and where they're, were the runs scored equal across all innings, most of the teams are. The Reds was not. It was like hot spots, and first inning was one of them, right? So do I want to shade this based on team tendency? And because that's ultimately capturing a little bit of the lineup thing without actually having to go and manually build a scraper for the lineups, which come out at a weird time anyway. Like, I want to be getting in. I want to make these bets before I know what the lineup is really where I'm getting at.
That's the other part too, is do you want to sit and have a bunch of either scraping this or setting alerts for certain, finding lineups for like on days where there's 15 games. I'm not finding 30 lineups. I think you're right. I think, that's probably built into the part as far as you say, like, are we modeling how lineups do as far as on getting on base and score? I mean, what are it's Moneyball shit. Like, we're not trying to we're trying to manufacture runs. Like, we don't want runs. We need people who get on base. You can't score if you're not on base. So, I think you're probably right there. Pulling lineups is a pain in the ass. But I feel like something like the Reds might be more noise than signal.
Okay.
There's going to be teams like that. But if you start hunting for that sort of thing, I think you're going to, whenever you go hunting for stuff like that in the data, you'll find it. Okay. And I think, you know what I mean? You'll find it, but you probably wish you wouldn't after you start betting according to that. Whenever you go looking for something specific like that might be, capable of being influenced by a lot of noise or just something that you can't maybe get the context right to.
Okay.
There are teams that just, I seems like this happens in the opposite for me, where it's like, Christ, every time my Twins play like the Dodgers, it's like, how is Kershaw up every time? Like, there should be a 2/5 chance that he's not. And we play him like, we play him, and it's always, or, just, so you could end up with some weird results based on like, man, they're just always catching this team when they're using their 4th and 5th starters in a 3-game series, or they've caught a bunch of teams where they've had spot starters or openers or injuries.
Okay.
The context of and that's my question to you. What context are you putting towards past results?
I just kind of want to know, I think, maybe more than anything, if there are certain teams that I should shade a little bit more likely, yes, based on team batting. Because I'm trying to plug a preemptively plug a leak on not actually capturing the lineup.
Yeah, no, and I think at the base level, you're right. Like there are teams there's obviously teams that are much more likely against, let's just say, against a median starting pitcher.
Yeah,
for sure. There's a bunch of teams that are going to be, they're just better hitters. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically a team without, I could obviously do the legwork and come up with the team batting score that reflected their average lineup and know which ones are imbalanced. But I'm guessing that every team's lineup is a little imbalanced to better hitters in the top of the lineup, and the discrepancy between the top and the bottom is even greater, right? So what I'm getting at is, if the market is telling you the Reds are going to score 4 runs tonight, and you distribute those 4 runs equally across 9 innings, and every inning has 0.45 runs.
Why would you distribute them equally?
Well, I'm just saying you shouldn't, right?
No, yeah.
The first inning should get the most.
I think that's right. I think maybe not always the first, but it should be higher than like the second and the third.
It's higher than the second and the third. Maybe
lower. Yeah, I think you should. That's where I'm saying, like, you should find that balance for each team. Like, all right, so you're just going to take a team total. You're going to take the juice on the team total, adjust it up. So, I mean, if it's a 4.5 minus 160, we're bumping that up to 5 just for easy use. So, you're bumping it up to whatever. That you're taking those 5 runs and that team total that's been given to you by the market. You're going to distribute it across the 9 innings.
Yeah.
But you're going to do it properly weighted into each spot, and that's how you're determining. Here's how many runs they score usually in the first, and that's what you're plugging into your Poisson.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, fuck, you can be rich. I think this is gonna work. I mean, no, it's
I don't know. I don't actually
rock
plug
solid
that. I'm not
base,
plugging that into my Poisson, but I'm
it's an anchoring point.
Anchoring
like
my
that.
Poisson.
You build an anchoring range. You anchor a range around that.
I want the integral of my Poisson to come back to tell me that on the mean expectation is this team scores 0.45 runs in this game. That is exactly what the market told us, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm going with that. Okay, then the last kind of key question: where do I get historical odds? I want to at least kind of have some way of back calculating this. I have historical data already figured out. I got that. I know I have my pitcher. I have my pitcher strength. I have my team batting strengths for the last 3 seasons. And now I want some odds to test my model against. You got any tips for, or you don't have to tell me on the podcast. You can just,
I was going to say,
but that's available. That's presumably there's a database out there that has totals, because I want 2 inputs beyond what I already have. Like, so far my inputs are pitcher, a pitcher metric, a team batting metric, a game total, and the last thing is the price for the yes no.
Yeah, I would think you're not going to go to like odds portal and find this sort of thing.
You probably could, but it's hard.
No, that's what I'm saying. You're not going to. You ever try scraping that?
It's hard.
It's awful. So here's the answer to that. And you know people.
Okay.
You know people.
Just find someone. Just
the
find
answer
someone
is
that
to
will give it
find
to you.
someone
Okay.
who is willing to share their database of history, because they went and pulled it over the course of years of just doing this. Like, and I don't know how far back you really need to go. Probably not that
No,
far.
I just want
And
a couple
here's
seasons.
here's the other part.
Yeah.
It's a very small part, and I think this is going to be much more important come it actually has no bearing on this, but once we get to K props, like the DH rule changes things certainly for that. And then, other changes for the K prop, or other changes in baseball over the years, have definitely impacted that. So going back too far is probably folly. I don't know how much. There's 2,500 games a year. Like, how much data do you think you need on pricing? 2 years?
Yeah. 2 years.
If you had
The shortened
opening and
season and the full
closing
season last year. Yeah.
if you had opening and closing game totals, and you had opening and Jesus, Dan, K-prop. You made a K-pop joke. The fucking train of thought is just derailed, Daniel. The if you had opening and closing game totals and opening and closing runs scored first inning prices for 2 years, like say roughly 4,000 games, because it's a shortened season in there.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's plenty, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
I hope Charlotte wins.
Charlotte's not doing great.
No, they're not going to win. I'm just picking on Dan.
Yeah, no, they're not doing great. They're giving up a lot of. Atlanta's shooting well, but Charlotte's defense has been pretty.
We did start this podcast kind of talking about how we haven't really spent much time on baseball over the years. We haven't. I mean, how much time have you spent on it this year?
None.
Okay.
I've watched the market a little bit.
I was going to say,
what about you?
Outside of the run scored first inning thing I tried to do at a DFS company, I did spend like 4 hours this weekend building out. Remember that Survivor League I did last year?
Yes.
I did my whole Survivor League again. Like, I built out all 26 weeks of Survivor for baseball.
Awesome.
So I spent some time with more along the lines of figuring out which weeks are good come August for a team, like to play shitty teams. So my baseball repertoire is starting to fill out here.
Doing some good work. Okay, so a couple of thoughts in general. I'm not an expert in park factor. I don't need to be if I'm using the total, the market total. I'm not an expert in weather. I don't need to be if I'm using the modified total.
Well, what about late news in Arlington or
about the roof closures?
Yeah, roof closures, like Arlington, and I believe Arizona can open. Milwaukee.
I think I'm just going to have to live with that.
Well, I'm saying if you didn't bet a game, and then that was, but would you monitor stuff like that later? Be like, they're going to open the roof in Arlington. I should go check what my number was at. I was close. I have to bet this yes now.
Yeah, probably. Yes.
I think there's 2 or 3 little things like that. Like, hey, the wind, the forecast was wrong. The wind is really going to blow out. Like, guess what? It's heavy out to left. We were close. It's the little bump we need. And you're right. The park factor thing, that's built into the total. People understand park factors.
Yes. Yeah. And so basically, I'm finding workarounds for areas of this handicap that I know I'm not an expert. Right. Okay. Is there anything else in my inputs that I need to strongly consider, or do you think I have the general skeleton to build something that's at least going to break even?
I mean, the second part's tougher, easier said than done. You know what the best part about a good model is?
What's that?
It started with a shitty model.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I think that's the answer, Drew. I don't know if you'll do good because I don't bet this market, and I'm sure both of you and I have huge blind spots and we're missing stuff.
Of course, yeah.
But even if you just paper bet this, it's worth building what you just said and comparing it to the market and seeing how it does.
Okay.
Maybe back testing it against the games that we haven't played very many games, but looking how it would have done. And just and then if you can find a spot where, like, I'm really, really off on a team or total range. Like when totals get above 9.5, I'm struggling with the pricing. Then you can start to, again, network, talk to your baseball guys, talk to people who understand things, be like, hey, I have a disconnect here. Can you help me with this? And you're going to find those blind spots. Like you have to just do the shit model to get the good model.
So last question for you.
Sorry, I called your model shitty.
That's okay. It is right now. It's not even a model. So there's no, it's not offended.
It's just words on the wind right now.
It's just a glimmer in a handicapper's eye. But is there a sharp side to our, to run scored first inning? Yes or no? Like, do I want to bias myself and bet what I know is going to not get accounts closed? Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Because like we're about to pivot to K-pop model. And if you're doing a K-pop model, you're probably going to want to skip betting the unders if you want to keep your accounts liquid, right?
Yeah, or spread it out. I don't know. That's the toughest part too. Like that, I don't even know if it's worth getting into that because that's a whole different conversation outside of this. But yeah, I mean that's just the honest truth. Like these accounts, especially paperheads with agents or some of the legal books who know which people bet what props. Like if you're getting massive CLV on props, like at an 80% clip, and you're betting the opposite of where most of the money is coming on some of those things, like under K props, then you're probably going to lose accounts. So it's a delicate dance, and I think this is why you tell people who, hey, I don't bet baseball yet, but I want to do something. This is a good entry point because I think a lot of those people aren't saying, hey, I want to bet baseball. I haven't ever bet baseball.
Sure.
But I also want to max it across 10 accounts. Like, they're not saying, I'm not calling you guys cheap asses, but that those don't marry together. Like, hey, I'm going to build a brand new model and I'm going to find the sharp size and, and I want to try to get 10K on each one of these. That's where I think this is fine to just try to find the value. If you're betting it recreationally, you're going to have a lot more luck keeping they're not going to care if you're betting the sharp side and unders and, you're just popping $50 a pop on these. Like that's not a worry, but I say that, but at the same time, some of the legal books don't see it that way right now too, where it doesn't matter the size of the bets. If you're on the sharp side of props, they will not only turn off the props for that, they'll turn off the props across the board.
No props.
Like our guy Connor over there did some 4-for-4 stuff. He tried to bet a prop he'd never bet before in a sport he'd never bet before.
There was $5 max or $2
and he couldn't
max,
do
right?
it. He's like, he got shut off on everything.
Okay, so key question, last final question, and then I want to ask you about your K-prop model. If let's say I track down market info, you have an opening price and a closing price. The steam on a yes/no prop for a run scored first inning is sharp? Question mark.
I think if you asked me this time last year, I'd say without a doubt 100%.
Okay.
Because again, they're not going to move on smaller bets, even in volume.
Yep.
Those are people that are hitting those across multiple accounts. It's popping places that are going to be on the board. It's getting botted into things. Yes. Now that it's become a really mainstream, fun recreational bet with some big influencers putting these plays out, and I mean you can just see
big influencers. Who's a big influencer?
Go look at these. Well, I mean, just let's take, and this isn't
Paige Spiranac is doing yes/no props.
Paige is a golf.
Is she doing yes/no? Oh.
She hasn't.
She's doing yes/no hole in one. Okay.
She hasn't lost make the cut parlay or make a cut prop yet. She had Tiger and Bryson nailed last week at the Masters.
Nails.
Bryson was kind of a fat number to miss the cut too. Like that was a big one.
He was a big one.
But no, Pat McAfee. I'm going to make an example about this. So Pat McAfee, FanDuel.
Big influencer. Yeah.
He's massive. He's
is that why? Is that where this started?
No.
Oh.
I'll get to it. But Pat McAfee does one of those.
Okay.
He does one of those parlays with FanDuel where it's a same game parlay that he promotes, and it's built, and it's a thing up on the top of the site, and it says this is the one that Pat McAfee. And then they do that thing where it shows like 300,000 people played this same game parlay that we made. It's already set up. All you have to do is click bet, and it bets it for you, so it's easier. They make the barrier to entry incredibly light, but the amount of people.
Barrier?
Yeah, the barrier. The barrier.
It's geographic only.
It's already behind you, sir. But they make those sort of things so easy, obviously. But I'm just saying, so many people are willing to follow, which is clearly probably a bad parlay. Yeah. Where
minus EV. Yeah.
Where the same thing is happening. Where let's say an influencer puts out something like this, and a bunch of people play this. And yes, this is the thing. The actual answer to how to bet K or props, there's a hidden website that just tells you.
There was a viral tweet that went around today, Andy, about teaching a man to fish. I want to learn to fish. I don't want to just have the fish handed to me by a very sharp player.
I know. I missed that, and then hand jobs.
Yeah, right.
Posted. I'm like, is he dying or what? Why is he being nice to me?
It was disingenuous, probably.
Yeah, no. It made sense after I figured it out. I'm like, fuck this guy.
Okay. Okay. So that makes sense. I see it. Hold. Okay. So then, if I
So back to the point. I didn't even answer the question. So the question was before
last couple of years,
the moves are sharp, but now you wonder if like the volume of small bets is enough where they're like, we might have to move this 10 cents. We got 1 trillion people on one side, and it doesn't. We don't care if somebody just start naming paperheads. Like
STS and Ace and
what's the one with the boat or the island? That's the one I can't get out of my head right now. Never mind, it doesn't matter. But we don't care if some of those paperheads are going to be 10 cents off us.
Metallic?
No. It'll come to me.
Anyway,
I think they have to say we don't care if we're off market if we're so underwater on this. Like we're gonna have to move this to maybe quit betting this.
Yeah. Okay.
Can't say that for sure. We should ask.
The reason I asked you that is
you should ask Jay.
Because presumptively, I'll ask him. Presumptively, if I have openers, closers, I could train my rudimentary model to kind of, in general, identify this team.
Yeah,
that would add value to it. You agree?
I think as like I almost said suppository, supplementary kind of thing.
Okay.
For sure. I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I can test because I have results anyway. So, okay. All right.
Still, Steam is going to change. Like during the year, like from all the times talking to Frank about. I mean, Frank was pretty frank about this when he was, when we had our daily show, me and him. He would talk about his baseball betting, and he said it's really starting pitcher heavy. Like if you can't get a good number for a starting pitcher, you might as well not bet baseball. He's like, there's a lot of other stuff going on, but like if you don't have a good bearing on what each pitcher is doing and how you should be upgrading and downgrading them, he's like, I don't know if I could win. So I think a lot of that is, you'll see the steam change throughout the year because those guys, I mean, the people who are genuinely, originating baseball, that's what they're watching. They're watching, like, is this starting pitcher actually good? He gets a few wins, has some good results. Is this a guy where I'm going to have to upgrade this, or am I going to just hammer fuck the absolute piss out of the other side of the line as the rest of the mania builds around some guy that everyone thinks is good that is not? Just understanding like where you can crush the market based on the mirage that is pitching luck sometimes.
I understand that. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's where I think your Steam thing would be important, because throughout the season, I think you'd learn things about starting pitchers that way. Even if you didn't use it for betting, you'd be like, why was this guy who was getting Steam, to the under for months, all of a sudden getting Steam to the over or to the yes constantly? What's happening? Then you go dig in, do some research on how he's pitching or something. It's tricky.
Okay. I want to avoid the macro noise about like the ball changed, that kind of stuff. I'm assuming the totals will guide me in that regard. K props, Andy, what are some of the lessons you learned from home run props that you're going to weave into your K prop experiment?
My biggest question that I never answered, and I would love this guy to chime in, is there actually signal to head-to-head stuff? And if there is, like,
batter versus pitcher, you're going to bring that back from the dead?
Yes. Well, I mean, because I think there's maybe a broader look of, like, could you put batters into buckets, like certain types of hitters? Or using hitting data based, like, hey, here's a bunch of guys who are crushing. I mean, I'm going to get too granular here, just for an example. Guys who can crush low and away and have a very low, swinging strike rate against breaking balls. And then you have a pitcher who's been very successful striking people out with breaking balls, and then you have two guys at the top of the lineup who are just not susceptible to that sort of thing.
Okay,
and
I see where you're going with this.
So that I've wondered about that with a lot of different props, but that's where I don't like getting just hitter versus batter. Like, oh, this guy's he's 5 for 8 against this guy all time. Like 2 of those were in 2013, buddy. He was playing for the Rockies. The other guy was coming off an injury. Like, what are we doing with this? So I don't love some of that. I think the bucket thing or the type of hitter has some legs. I just haven't
categorization. That you need to come up with an algorithmic way to do it, because
that's where I think that's too much. Where it's more of a strength weakness type thing. Like, this pitcher historically gives up meatballs. And not even home runs. I don't think home runs not going to give you enough data. Hard hit balls, barrel rates, doubles, like hard hit. I mean, there's a bunch of stats about this. So using some, like, when this guy gives up hard hit balls, what, is there a type of pitch? Is there a type of batter who's, maybe making up a big part of the distribution of people that are tattooing this guy? And then you start looking at prices.
Okay, so let me add.
I think that's the basis of it.
Let me back up a step then. So presumably, what you're getting at is that there is more. There is a way to take some of the uncertainty, some of the noise out of how many Ks a pitcher gets on a given night, right? What we're saying is, like, if a guy is averaging 5.5 Ks a night, but some nights are 2 and some nights are 8, you're trying to find beforehand when it's going to be a 2 or an 8, and his total is 5.5 every night, right? Like, that's effectively what you're getting at, right?
And I think if you're and again, I'm still stuck on home runs. I forgot we're even doing K props. I'm still doing home run props in my head.
No, that's okay.
And I think that's where baseball stats have been good for that, where you have all this defensive, independent of the defensive stats, where, hey, this guy only had 2 Ks like a couple times in a row, and then you go look and be like, no, he had a good outing. He had shit luck. He had a bad defense behind him that day, and he probably should. And you have to look like,
you're never gonna get the luck part out of it, though.
No,
there needs to be an actual mechanism that you're trying to quantify, and it's got to be
That's what I'm saying. Like if he has bad luck because his defense was shit behind him, you can't say like, oh, he's a better pitcher than that. He's definitely gonna. I should throw those out. No, guess what? He still plays for that team, and that sort of luck is gonna happen to him more often than a team with a good defense.
Okay.
So like that's what I'm saying. I don't think you should be able to just throw out edge cases based on that independent of the defensive stuff. Because a lot of that is where I start to lean when I start looking at like how good is this pitcher actually. But the thing about it is he still plays for that team, or he still plays in that park. He plays in a home park where, it's a good way to get yourself a very short outing is a couple of balls that fly a little further because of the weather or the shape of the outfield, and some instant runs happen, and then you only get 3 Ks because you went 2 1/3. Whereas, guess what? If you were pitching in a different park, you'd have been cruising because of the way those balls would have fallen at the warning track instead. So and that's not something you can change unless he gets traded, I guess. But hey, guess what? This is where you pitch. You're in a bandbox.
Do you think that in general,
and that's probably built in the market, I guess. That's why I don't like K props.
Okay. Do you think in general that there is an element of what is the pitcher trying to do on a given night that influences some of the noise? Like some nights he comes in and he tries to pitch to contact. Some nights he comes in and he's trying to do something differently because of the lineup or because of the matchup.
Do you think you can predict that ahead of time?
Well, if you have, that's where I'm getting at with it. Analytics is a huge part of the game now. Like they're telling these guys to do what will help them be successful. If they're, if you're coming up against a team and they are putting the shift on for half of the lineup.
Can't do that anymore, I don't think.
Well, not this year you can. Next year you can, right?
Yeah. So I think that's so.
But I mean, if they're putting the shift on, then the idea of the pitcher is not trying to strike a guy out, he's trying to get him to hit into contact, right?
I don't know if that's true.
You think that you don't think that there's a concerted effort between the way that they're pitching a certain batter and the way that they're defending him?
Yes, but at the same time, just because you throw your second baseman on the other side of the bag doesn't mean you still wouldn't try to strike him out anyway.
Well, you'll take it. Obviously, every out is fine, but I feel like
it's a bit of. I honestly think it might even be the opposite. Hey, we're going to put the shift on for you. We're really going to try to get you to roll over a ball and put it on the ground over there. Like, if you've got that in his head, you're a step ahead. No, I'm going to give him high cheese here. And because he thinks we're getting low stuff to try to hit a grounder. Like, I wonder if, pitchers, it's a chess game out there. So I don't know if it's like for sure, hey, guess what? We put the shift on. We want you to hit this ball. I think it's part of the chess game where it's not always the case.
Okay. I feel like if I was made to do a live market about what's going to happen with this at bat, oh my God, the Charlotte Hornets absolutely sucking the life out of this.
Did you bet the over
game.
or what?
No, I bet the Hornets with the points. They are not even going to come fucking close.
Did you bet the Spurs too?
Everybody on Atlanta is playing great. I took the Spurs too, yeah. Everybody on the Hawks is just playing incredibly well tonight.
Would you say this is a team of destiny?
Well, it's a team that's definitely going to go to, that they're definitely going to beat the Cavaliers the way they're playing tonight. If they go to Cleveland on Friday and play this well, they're going to beat the Cavaliers by
I think that pleases me. I think I don't want this version of the Cavs in the playoffs. I'm excited for the future of the Cavs, I think.
I mean, Heat Hawks, this Heat Hawks is going to be a good series if this is the team that shows up.
Jimmy and our guy Trey going at each other. Not even just on in between plays, like dead ball yelling at each other should be fun.
Yeah.
All right, back to the shift. I tend to agree with what I said.
Okay, so I see if you maybe make a live market on what is the outcome of this at bat and it's in play, strikeout, ground, in play, strikeout, batted out.
I bet it's not that different than a normal distribution.
My odds go up and down on strikeout, up on batted out if I see a shift.
gonna have to ask somebody on that. That's interesting because I would bet it doesn't change noticeably. I don't think you just because that's so obvious. Like you can't do the obvious when you're throwing it. Like if he's looking for the stuff that you think your scouting report is telling, he knows what you're reading on him. He knows what he rolls over. So he thinks he knows what you're going to throw. I'd throw him what he doesn't think's coming. You got to keep them on their toes. We've spent too much time on the. I love it when we have these arguments where neither of us has empirical evidence one way or the other.
What you were describing in terms of coming up with the data set of categories is tough, and it
Very
only,
tough.
in my opinion, it only helps you sort out the noise if there is some like tangible pitcher does this to, is actually trying to.
That's tough.
Okay.
I'd like that to be a thing because it would make it easier. But what I'd like to happen isn't what's always likely to happen. It'd be nice. And like you said, with analytics taking a big hold in how teams prepare, and obviously they're not sharing that. They're not, hey, here's our scouting report. This is what Kershaw's going to do with each batter tonight. Like if we had that, we'd have a good idea. But obviously that's super proprietary, and it's going to change based on the chess match that is baseball. Because if you're a hitting coach, you know what your hitter's weaknesses are, and Kershaw's looking at that. So you're saying, hey, here's how he probably tries to approach each one of you guys, and if he's going to approach you this way, this is how you need to mix it up. Otherwise, he's going to win because you're a bad hitter.
Okay.
They probably don't say it that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if you're going to try to solve the K-prop that way, and you're literally going to be like, hey, we're going to come in and explain why a guy explain the variance around the average for a given pitcher. Like he goes 6 innings, 3 starts in a row. He has the same amount of contact, gives up the same amount of hits, same amount of runs, but one has 2 Ks, one has 5, and one has 8. Being able to explain why he had 2 in one game and why he had 8 in the other game, besides just the strength, the tendencies of the opposing batters. If you can figure that out, then I think you have something that probably.
Yeah, I just don't think that's solvable.
Okay.
Because I even let's say the same pitcher faces the same exact lineup a month apart, the tendencies might be completely different based on what the coaches put together. The pitching coach, the catcher, and that pitcher get together, and you can say this is how he approaches light hitting outfielders, and you have a couple more of those, and it might be a different approach because again, you always got to stay 2 steps ahead when in the scouting departments, and being predictable is bad for baseball because that's when somebody takes you to Pound Town, hits the bull, gets a free steak. And maybe I'm giving coaching too much credit, but
no, I don't think
they do. They do a lot, and that's why I think it's going to be so hard to try to really nail down what's a pitcher's aim in this at bat outside of the optimal out or double play. And maybe that there's something I would value this over a shift. I would think 1 out, runner on first. I value a ground ball at a much higher rate than when I have a shift on.
Okay.
A double play ball is just a way bigger swing to win probability than, getting a guy to hit into a near sure out because you have a shift on.
Okay. Interesting.
So don't you think there's other situations like that where, guy on third tight game, like for sure he's pitching a certain way because a pop fly is horrible for your team at that point, especially if he's, let's say a lefty.
Yes. Yes.
So I definitely no, I think you're onto something. There are for sure situations where it's just like, I don't care what the scouting report says. Like he can't be pitching this way because it's absolute boneheaded thing, and it's going to lose the team the game.
Okay.
And still, you'll see pitchers do that in some cases anyway, because of the variance of life in sports. But I'm sure there's 20 other situations like that. Those are the two main ones that popped in my head. But
yeah,
that's not something you can predict before the game, though.
No, that's an in-game. That would be like an example of in-game, forecasting, as opposed to being able to tease that into some pregame model, unless you had a team that has a team that has an especially high on base percentage.
I was going to say a high on base percentage against a pitcher that just cannot induce ground balls.
Yeah.
Like that pitcher might be gone soon, because he's sitting there letting them move around, ducks moving around the pond. So you can't ever get a pitcher's best friend. There's something to that pregame. I don't know. This is tough. Baseball's tough.
It is tough, man. And not
There's so
having
many things
really
going
ever
on.
bet it until now makes me think I'll probably have to pay some tuition to ever get anything that even breaks even in this sport.
We didn't even know we were recording. We're just kind of having a meeting here, trying to figure out how to bet baseball.
Brainstorming. Yeah.
Just brainstorming.
For sure.
So that way higher level question then.
Yes.
No run, yes run are en vogue right now.
Yes.
So those markets may move in a weird way, like we posited before, because of the undue influence of the influencer and the fact that, a lot of people are betting them right now.
Mm-hmm.
K props are already popular. Do you think at that point it may be better to go further down the ladder, even if it means maybe a loss and how much you can get down? But are you trying to find something that people aren't betting, because you could be the signal in that market? A single player's total bases, a single player's hit runs, RBIs, a single player's home run props. I talked about that a little earlier. Is that maybe the solution? Get real granular on one batter. Because I think you can do some managerial tendencies on how often they pull people late in games. But for the most part, I think you can get a real nuts on number for if he's at this spot in the lineup, he gets, he gets 4.2. Just, again, don't email about this. But 4.2, let's just say, I'd love to know what the actual average at bats for a batter is, just across for a starter, like somebody in the 3-hole. That'd be interesting, though. But I'm going to say 4.2 as an example. Like, you could probably nail down, hey, when this guy plays, it's a good enough offense. It's a team that usually has higher totals based on their park factors.
Yep.
So he's getting like 4.3. He's an above average, because then you'd have an average too. You'd say he gets on average 0.2 of an at bat more than the median ball player.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can start doing some stuff with the starting pitching. I think that's where I would be having some fun with, is individual batter props.
Oof. Okay.
High variant. I think you'd have to kill them with volume, because those are going to be a bunch of good bets that you lose every night, and hopefully the bad ones that you win make up for some of that. But there's probably enough information about, again, not fully bucketing, but this batter, his tendencies, his strengths against the starting pitcher. And then, I don't know, man, the bullpen stuff. I don't think you spending the time trying to figure out, all right, Wilson pitched 2 days in a row and Garrett's is hurt, so here's their 6 options. They likely, there's a 31% chance that this guy pitches the 8th. Like, that's not worth the time.
What is on offer for that sort of stuff?
I think everything started tonight already, Drew.
Oh, really? The last one?
Yeah, it was a weird day where dude, I got to work after lunch and 7 baseball games had started already. It was a weird day for that. But total bases for a player. I believe hits plus runs plus RBIs is available. And then, 2 hit a home run. And that's another one too, where I'd see, one book has a guy 4-1, another book has him 550. There's some big differences in those markets.
Cool.
I don't know. What's your thought on that? Do you think that's harder than K props?
No. I think it's different. I think any what you're describing, you have to do bottom up.
Yeah.
Basically, you're more or less simulating a guy's at-bats in a game and simulating the outcome of those at-bats. You're doing it granularly. And I think
it would take an incredible amount of setup.
No. I think you can keep it pretty simple where you just have individual player distributions of outcomes, and then shift it, scale it based on a pitcher value.
It's a lot to scrape and clean and set up to begin with. You know how many batters there are, dude?
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
A few hundred. So
couple 200-300.
Couple 200-300 for sure. Yeah, it would just take a lot of time to get the legwork. I mean, any of these is going to take a lot of time.
They're not going to offer a lot, though. You can't get every single batter's numbers, can you? I feel like they only pick like 5 or 6 in a game.
No, for sure. No, it's going to be the names. Like you're not betting Joe Schmo hitting in the 7-hole. It's not something you offer, but even for home run props, it's usually only 3-4 guys on a team, maybe not even.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Race to 3-5-7 runs. I mean, that's just your yes/no built out a little further.
Yeah.
Except you're not just looking for a binary outcome.
Yeah.
You need to figure out like how often do they score a crooked number here? How often do we get 3?
Well, no, you're developing your distribution.
Yeah, it's the same. It's your same Poisson distribution. You just you'd have to interact with it a little differently because.
Well, once you have it for every inning, then you just simulate you sample simulation where you're just picking from the distribution, adding them up, and
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. You just want to pick. Yeah.
I don't hate that.
All right. Well, this was a good brainstorming session. I'm going to take a lot of lessons from this and apply them in a forward sense, and we'll touch base as we run out of things to talk about related to basketball and football. We'll be in the doldrums. We'll be in the doldrums before we know it. We're busy right now, but
there is a lot going on. I was going to say maybe we should give each other homework on this.
Okay.
So I'm going to look at our schedule.
All right.
I have a real loosey-goosey schedule.
Let's do it like after 2 weeks after the Derby and after the that'll be like right around when we're close to the finals, but there won't be much to talk about in the NBA.
All right. So next week I have maybe an NBA guest, a fun NFL draft guest on Wednesday, maybe a double guest week. Who knows?
Nice.
The week after that, I have a tentative NHL talk. Excellent. Because the NHL playoffs will be very, very close to starting. And Excellent. Then we have the draft is that week. And then we have the Oaks and the Derby, plus possibly an auto racing podcast. So the next 3 weeks are full. And then after that, I think we did kind of say we should do something around Rome ATP.
Yeah. That is.
And then there is really not a lot going on. The week of the 16th, 17th, 18th of May, NBA lottery, the PGA, Southern Hills, Roland Garros starts, and the Preakness. That is a massive week. So the week before that is looking like
the one. We'll come back and do Baseball Porps Part 2. Science fair. Here's what I built, and it's lost this much money, which is less than I was worried.
Did you know caffeine actually helps plants grow?
What? Bullshit.
So that was my daughter's science fair project, was putting different things in the soil and seeing how marigolds grow. And she said, she's like, she put coffee grounds in one, and they did the best. She's like, well, it's the caffeine, right? Caffeine makes you full of energy. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're dumb, you're 10. And then we looked it up, and like for sure, like coffee grounds are legitimately a really good thing to just like anything else. You can OD on water. You can't just grow it in straight coffee grounds, but coffee grounds to a certain point are a really good thing to add to the soil.
Huh.
And she got first place.
Not because of the caffeine, though.
No,
some of the other nutrients.
It was mostly the board, I think. She just did a really good job on that.
Oh, okay. Not because she was drinking coffee. Okay.
I went, all right. No, it's caffeine actually speeds up the ability to photosynthesize and absorb water.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Wow.
How about that?
Look at this. Papa's using it on it. Maybe we got a Canadian who's growing some of these in his backyard.
I always thought bat guano was the secret ingredient.
I mean, that doesn't hurt either.
That's hugely important if you're in the grow business. Get your guano from a licensed professional, not from one of those vans
one of those fly-by-night guano dealers.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. All right, let's call it a Wednesday. Let's call it a week.
All right, man.
We'll come back.
Good deal.
Yes, good. The NBA playoffs will be starting next week, and we'll be all over it. And the NFL draft is going to be dangerously close. And we have a badass guest, a badass poll. It's a fun one.
All right. Best of luck to the Spurs. Hopefully they don't
lose by more than 4.
Lose by more than 4. Yeah, that would be a bummer. All right. I'll talk to you next week. I saw that weather in Chicago. I got all over that under. It's giving me a sweat now. 20-mile-an-hour winds blowing in.
I just need the
Chicago
Mets.
Still got 4 runs in the second.
I need the Mets to win one more game out of their final